In the small, misty village of Valenshire, a palpable sense of unease had settled like the perpetual fog that shrouded its cobblestone streets. Nestled in the heart of a dense forest, the village had long been isolated from the outside world, its inhabitants living in quiet obscurity. But recently, a series of strange occurrences had shattered the peace. The villagers whispered about a shadow that moved through the night, unseen yet felt, an oppressive presence that chilled the blood and stirred primal fears. Livestock were found drained of blood, their lifeless bodies a stark warning to those who dared venture out after dark. Yet, the true terror began when people started disappearing. Mara, a young woman with fiery red hair and a courageous heart, had always dismissed the old legends of vampires as mere superstition. But when her brother, Tomas, vanished without a trace, she found herself drawn into the very heart of the mystery. Armed with little more than a silver dagger and her wits, she decided to uncover the truth. One moonless night, as the village slept, Mara crept through the dense forest, guided by an old map she had found in her brother's belongings. The map led her to an ancient, crumbling castle, its dark silhouette looming against the sky like a jagged wound. The air grew colder as she approached, her breath visible in the pale light of her lantern. Inside, the castle was a labyrinth of decaying hallways and grand, dusty chambers. Mara felt eyes watching her from the shadows, an invisible presence that made her skin crawl. She pressed on, her footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. Finally, she reached the heart of the castle, a grand hall with a massive, ornate coffin at its center. As she approached the coffin, the lid slowly creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness. The vampire's eyes glowed a malevolent red, its fangs glistening in the dim light. "I have been waiting for you," it hissed, its voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "Your brother was merely the first. You will join him soon enough." Before Mara could react, the vampire moved with supernatural speed, pinning her against the cold stone floor. She struggled, her hand inching toward the silver dagger at her belt. Just as she grasped the hilt, a piercing scream echoed through the hollow screen she recognized as Tomas's. Tomas, pale and gaunt, stumbled into the hall, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and defiance. "Run, Mara!" he shouted, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Save yourself." But Mara couldn't leave her brother behind. Summoning all her strength, she plunged the silver dagger into the vampire's chest. The creature let out a blood-curdling screech, its body convulsing as it turned to ash. Gasping for breath, Mara helped Tomas to his feet. "We have to go," she said, her voice trembling. "There's more to this than we know." Together, they fled the castle, the shadows of the forest closing in around them. As they reached the village, they could hear the distant howls of creatures in the night, a chilling reminder that the vampire's curse was far from over. Valenshire might never be the same, but Mara and Tomas knew one thing for certain. The fight against the darkness had only just begun. Back in the safety of their modest home, Mara and Tomas collapsed onto the rough-hewn chairs in their small kitchen. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, dancing ominously on the walls. Tomas, still weak from his ordeal, sipped on a cup of warm broth, his eyes haunted by what he had endured. "We can't stay here," Tomas finally said, breaking the tense silence. "The vampire may be gone, but there are others. I heard them whispering in the dark, speaking of a master more powerful than any we faced." Mara's grip tightened on the handle of her dagger, the silver blade still stained with the vampire's ashes. "Then we need to find this master and end this once and for all. We can't let Valenshire fall to these creatures." Tomas nodded, but his eyes betrayed a deep-seated fear. "There's something else, Mara. In the castle, I found a journal. It belonged to someone named Alaric. He wrote about a ritual, one that could summon or banish the most powerful vampire lord. But the journal is incomplete, torn pages scattered across different places. We need to find them." The siblings knew that their journey would be fraught with danger. Valenshire's neighboring villages had their own dark legends, each one potentially hiding a piece of the puzzle. With resolve stealing their hearts, they packed provisions and set out at dawn, leaving their village with heavy hearts but determined spirits. Their first destination was the village of Blackwood, known for its eerie forest and ancient ruins. The villagers were wary of strangers, but Mara and Tomas managed to gain the trust of an old hermit named Alara, who claimed to know about Alaric's journal. Alara led them deep into the forest, to a secluded grove where the trees seemed to whisper secrets. "This place is old," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "Older than any of us. Alaric came here seeking answers, and he left behind clues for those brave enough to follow." In the grove, they found a stone altar covered in moss and vines. Carved into its surface were cryptic symbols and an inscription in a language neither Mara nor Tomas recognized. Alara handed them a worn parchment, the missing page from Alaric's journal. "Translate the inscription," Alara advised, "and it will guide you to the next piece. But beware, for the path ahead is perilous, and the creatures of the night are drawn to those who seek the truth." As night fell, the trio made camp by the grove. Alara shared stories of her youth, of battles fought against the darkness, and of friends lost to the creatures that haunted the night. Tomas, his strength slowly returning, began to translate the inscription by the flickering light of the campfire. "It's a map," he said, excitement and dread mingling in his voice. "It points to the village of Ravenscroft, where Alaric's mentor lived. We must go there next." Their sleep was restless, filled with nightmares of fanged beasts and shadowy figures. Just before dawn, a blood-curdling howl pierced the silence. Mara awoke with a start, her hand instinctively gripping her dagger. In the dim light, she saw glowing eyes watching them from the edge of the grove. The creatures attacked swiftly, their pale, emaciated forms moving with unnatural speed. Mara and Tomas fought valiantly, their weapons flashing in the early morning light. Alara, too, revealed a surprising strength, wielding a silver-tipped staff with deadly precision. When the last creature fell, turning to ash at their feet, Alara looked at the siblings with grim determination. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The closer you get to the truth, the more they will come for you. But you must not falter." Alaric believed that the key to ending this nightmare lies within the ritual. Find the remaining pages, and you might just have a chance. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, casting a golden glow over the forest, Mara and Tomas knew there was no turning back. The village of Ravenscroft awaited, along with the next piece of the puzzle. They packed their belongings, said their goodbyes to Alara, and set off, the weight of their mission heavy on their shoulders. Little did they know, an ancient evil watched their every move, its plans unfolding with each step they took. And somewhere in the shadows, a figure cloaked in darkness smiled, anticipating their arrival. The journey to Ravenscroft would test their resolve, challenge their courage, and reveal secrets that could either save or doom them. The true battle was just beginning, and the vampire's curse was far from over. The journey to Ravenscroft was arduous, the path winding through dense forests and over treacherous hills. Mara and Tomas moved with purpose, their senses heightened by the ever-present feeling of being watched. The air grew colder as they approached their destination, the landscape becoming more desolate and foreboding. Ravenscroft was a village shrouded in gloom, its buildings aged and worn, the streets empty and silent. The villagers they did encounter cast suspicious glances, their eyes filled with a haunted look that spoke of countless nights of terror. It was clear that they lived in fear, and Mara and Tomas could sense that the evil they sought to confront had left its mark here. Seeking information, they headed to the local tavern, a dimly lit establishment where the air was thick with the scent of smoke and stale ale. They approached the barkeeper, a burly man with a scar running down his face, and inquired about Alaric's mentor. I remember him," the barkeeper said, his voice low and gruff. "Name was Harlan. A scholar," they said. "He lived on the outskirts of the village, in a manor that's been abandoned for years. No one goes there anymore. It's cursed, they say," with directions in hand. Mara and Tomas made their way to Harlan's manor. The building loomed ahead, its windows shattered, and its walls covered in ivy. The front door creaked open with a ghostly wail as they stepped inside, the air thick with dust and decay. The manor was a labyrinth of dark hallways and empty rooms, each one filled with remnants of a past long forgotten. In Harlan's study, they found shelves lined with ancient tomes and scattered parchments. Tomas sifted through the documents, his eyes widening as he found another piece of Alaric's journal. "Mara, look at this," Tomas said, his voice filled with excitement. "It's a detailed account of the ritual, but it's still incomplete. We need one more page." Their search was interrupted by the sound of footsteps echoing through the manor. Mara drew her dagger, and Tomas readied his sword, their hearts pounding as the footsteps grew closer. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked in darkness, its face hidden beneath a hood. "I see you have found Harlan's study," the figure said, its voice smooth and cold. "I have been expecting you." Mara and Tomas stood their ground, their weapons at the ready. "Who are you?" Mara demanded. "What do you want?" The figure lowered its hood, revealing a pale, angular face with piercing blue eyes. "My name is Lucian," he said. "I am a servant of the one you seek, the vampire lord. But I am not here to fight. I have come to offer you a choice." "Why should we trust you?" Tomas asked, his grip tightening on his sword. "Because we have a common enemy," Lucian replied. "The vampire lord has grown too powerful, and his reign of terror must end. I can help you, but you must trust me." Mara and Tomas exchanged a wary glance. They had little reason to trust Lucian, but his knowledge could be invaluable. "What do you want in return?" Mara asked. "Your word," Lucian said, "that when the time comes, you will show me mercy. I have served the vampire lord out of fear, but I wish to be free of his grasp. Help me, and I will help you." Reluctantly, Mara and Tomas agreed. Lucian led them through a hidden passage in the manor, revealing a secret chamber filled with artifacts and scrolls. "This is where Harlan kept his most valuable discoveries," Lucian explained, including the final page of Alaric's journal. Tomas carefully unfolded the page, his eyes scanning the intricate symbols and writings. "This is it," he said, his voice trembling with anticipation. "The complete ritual." But their triumph was short-lived. A sudden chill filled the chamber, and the shadows seemed to come alive. From the darkness emerged a figure more terrifying than any they had faced, a tall, imposing man with eyes that glowed like embers and a presence that radiated pure malice. "Fools," the vampire lord hissed, his voice echoing with power. "You think you can challenge me? Your journey ends here." Mara, Tomas, and Lucian stood frozen, their hearts pounding with fear. The vampire lord raised his hand, and a wave of darkness surged towards them. With no time to think, Mara and Tomas braced themselves for the fight of their lives, their only hope lying in the ritual they had just discovered. As the vampire lord advanced, his laughter filling the chamber with an eerie resonance, Mara knew that the true battle was only beginning. The fate of Valenshire, and perhaps the entire world, hung in the balance. Their courage and determination would be tested as never before, and the outcome was far from certain. The fight against the darkness had reached its climax, and the final confrontation awaited. Would they succeed in vanquishing the vampire lord, or would they fall, becoming yet another chapter in the cursed history of Valenshire? The answer lay in the shadows, where the line between life and death blurred, and the true nature of courage was revealed. The air grew thick with tension as the vampire lord advanced, his malevolent presence filling the chamber. Mara and Tomas stood side by side, their weapons drawn, while Lucian watched with a mixture of fear and resolve. The vampire lord's laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound that seemed to seep into their very bones. "You dare to challenge me?" he taunted, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. "You will join the others who have tried and failed." With a flick of his wrist, the vampire lord sent a wave of darkness crashing towards them. Mara and Tomas dove out of the way, narrowly avoiding the deadly force. Lucian, however, was not so fortunate. The darkness enveloped him, and he let out a choked scream before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. Mara and Tomas scrambled to their feet, their hearts pounding with fear. "We have to perform the ritual," Tomas shouted, his voice barely audible over the vampire lord's laughter. "It's our only chance." But the vampire lord was relentless. He moved with supernatural speed, closing the distance between them in an instant. His hand shot out, grasping Tomas by the throat and lifting him off the ground. "Do you think you can defeat me with your pathetic incantations?" The vampire lord sneered. "You are nothing but insects to me." Mara lunged at the vampire lord, her silver dagger aimed at his heart. but he swatted her aside effortlessly, sending her crashing into the wall. Pain shot through her body, and she struggled to stand, her vision blurred. With Tomas still in his grasp, the vampire lord tightened his grip, his eyes burning with a sinister light. "You will die slowly," he promised, "and your souls will be mine for eternity." Desperate, Mara forced herself to her feet. She could see Tomas's face turning blue, his eyes filled with terror. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, she reached for the ritual scroll, her fingers trembling. But it was too late. With a final, bone-crushing squeeze, the vampire lord snapped Tomas's neck. His lifeless body crumpled to the ground, and Mara let out a heart-wrenching scream. The vampire lord turned his gaze to her, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "And now, you," he said, advancing slowly. "Your bravery is admirable, but ultimately futile." Mara clutched the scroll, tears streaming down her face. She knew there was no escape, no hope left. As the vampire lord loomed over her, she felt a cold, overwhelming despair. "Your brother was brave," the vampire lord said softly, almost mockingly. "But bravery alone cannot save you." With a swift motion, he plunged his fangs into Mara's neck. Pain exploded through her body, and she felt her life force draining away. The room spun, and darkness closed in around her. As her vision dimmed, she saw the vampire lord's face, his eyes filled with triumph. "Welcome to eternity," he whispered. The last thing Mara felt was a cold emptiness, a darkness that consumed her completely. Her body went limp, and the scroll slipped from her fingers, falling to the ground, forgotten. Valenshire fell silent, its last hope extinguished. The vampire lord stood victorious, his power unchallenged. The village remained in eternal darkness, its inhabitants doomed to a fate worse than death. And somewhere in the shadows, a figure cloaked in darkness watched, a satisfied smile on its lips. The reign of terror had only just begun, and the darkness would spread, consuming all in its path. The battle was over, and the light had lost.